The Washington Commanders have gotten off to a red hot start this year, and we want to know more about why. So this week, Bear Era is going to school. This week on Bear Era, we've got one of the absolute best in the game joining us, dropping knowledge. That's JT O'Sullivan, creator and host of the QB School on YouTube, and he will be here later in the show talking about everything Cliff Kingsbury and Jaden Daniels have been whipping up in the nation's capital. But first, Ciaran, how you feeling? We had a bye week and we're rolling into a game with the Commanders. How's that landing with you?
Yeah, pretty good. It's nice on the back of our last episode of the podcast with Robert Mays. It allowed us to kind of relax over the weekend. No Bears game, and you just get, as I said to a couple of my friends, I get to hate watch and not have to worry about the Bears. So yeah, it was good. I love hate watching when my team is 4-2 heading into the bye week. So yeah, it's good. It's an exciting week, and yeah, getting to have JT on the show today is going to be a lot of fun.
One of the best out there. Always a great time when we get to talk to him. Speaking of some of the best out there, we've got some of the best fans out there. Thanks to everybody who has watched, commented, liked, subscribed. We're over 350 subscribers now, with more every day. If you haven't subscribed, make sure to, so you get updates on all the great Bears content we are pumping out. But we couldn't do this without primary partners as well. Big thanks to Blue Wire Podcast and to Homage Clothing. I'm wearing my Dick Butkus Homage shirt today in honor of the man. So we will get right to it and launch into Top Trio. So, Ciaran, what is your point of influence for this week, heading into the nation's capital, back home for Caleb to go face the Commanders?
Yeah, so it's a big storyline, obviously, and I think it's something that everybody's been talking about. Maybe it's dimmed a little bit with kind of the news on Jaden Daniels and the rib injury and will he play, won't he play, but still, I think it's an interesting one to talk about. And if they were to come up against each other, the story, the headlines, is all Caleb versus Jaden, when in reality it's not so much that. It's more of who are these two players coming up against, and Caleb is getting to come up against a Commanders defense that isn't going to set the world alight. So, to say the least, just for kind of people listening, and if you want to go and have a look at this, but the Commanders are 22nd in points allowed in the league. They allow 24.2 points per game. They're 23rd in yards allowed. They're 22nd in rushing yards allowed. And they are 28th in the amount of touchdowns that they allow in the red zone. And then when you look at that and what Caleb's been able to do the last couple of weeks, even though the Commanders have been a good team this year and look really good on offense, this is still a Commanders defense you should be able to get after. And you don't have to do it just in the air or just on the ground, because they give up a lot of yards, they give up a lot of touchdowns, but that offense has kind of propelled them to win the games that they have this year. So really there should be no trepidation from the Bears offensive coaching staff. They've had a week to prepare for this. You have, hopefully players are getting a bit healthier, because there's probably been some niggles over the last couple of weeks, but you should be able to go in there and at least be able to score on this Commanders team. And then it really comes down to what can the defense do to halt Jaden Daniels, or if it's going to be Marcus Mariota, whoever it is, because realistically, you look at last week in the NFL, and it didn't make a massive difference when Jaden did go out. They were still able to score because that offense is humming right now. So it's going to be a big game for the defense, but I think that this could be a game where Caleb Williams again can continue the trajectory that he's currently on over the last couple of weeks, to where he can get a couple of touchdowns here, he can get the yardage, but also we might be able to see a little bit more from the wide receivers that maybe some of the deep passes that we saw last year against the Commanders to DJ. Maybe we see a couple of that this year as well. And just for everybody, if anyone needs a reminder, DJ Moore had 3 touchdowns against these guys last year. So it'll be good to see. But like you mentioned it yourself, a homecoming for Caleb. People talking about Jaden Daniels being the number 1 quarterback in this draft class. That's going to light a fire under Caleb Williams, and I'm excited to see what happens this coming weekend.
Yeah, all those offensive rookie of the week awards that have gone Jaden Daniels' way, those are probably going to sit with Caleb a certain way. We'll see. You mentioned it in terms of the difference in the quarterbacks. Everybody's talking about Jaden Daniels, and rightfully so. He's been on an absolute tear, as has Caleb Williams. Jaden started his even a little bit earlier. But when he did go out with the rib injury last week, Marcus Mariota came in, and it didn't look great for the first drive or two. And a lot of, I'm sure, Commanders fans thought, oh, here we go. And then a funny thing happened. Mariota warmed up, and they ran basically exactly the same offense, continued to roll off points, and he made a bunch of throws. So it's good from a Bears standpoint if you're the defense going to prepare for this. You don't have to prepare for 2 wildly different guys. Jaden's obviously better, but Marcus ran the same offense. It's not like he came in and they changed to primarily a rushing attack or an RPO-based attack. They already had some of that in the ball game, but they asked him to throw the ball. They asked him to throw the ball over the middle. So it's not really going to be a difference as to who's at quarterback outside of the skill level and some contain. Mariota doesn't have the same juice in his legs he did when he was drafted, but we'll see how it happens for them. My point of emphasis for the week is if we're thinking about this Bears team like a sculpture, a lot of the roughing out process is already done. The basics are there on offense and defense. The main shapes have been established, but there is plenty of fine shaping and finish work to be completed. On offense, I think that really comes down to putting the right guys in the right roles. We've seen successful plays from the offense. We've seen those stack into drives, and that's great. But we've also continued to see what I'll call misuse of guys in certain roles or not maximizing guys in certain roles. If there are guys, especially in the wide receiver core, where the usage is a little bit confusing. When you see DJ Moore running the short little check out and you see Keenan running a deeper route and you see Rome running a little sort of nothing in, you're like, can I reshuffle those? Can I put Rome on the sort of highest leverage outside route and see what he can do? Because that's why we drafted him in terms of his catch radius and his ability to win the ball down the field. Same thing with the backs. They have figured this out much better in the last few weeks. Get DeAndre Swift in space. And when Roschon comes in, yes, run him in between the tackles. But the great thing about Roschon is you don't just have to run him in between tackles because he's good at catching the ball and you can play him in the outside screen game. So it can be inside runs or outside passes. It's not a tip to the defense or a key to say, okay, load the box. Roschon's in the game. He's basically going to be running, power, counter, duo, inside stuff. Well, he might, and he's really good at that, but that's not the only thing he can do, and you can still use him outside in the screen game. On defense, it's really about getting guys healthy. This defense has had a bunch of attrition thanks to injuries, and adding a run-stuffing DT into the rotation. Now, whether that's Zach Pickens coming back from injury and getting healthy and starting to be able to hold the point of attack, which was never necessarily his strong suit, but you mentioned it in a couple of previous weeks. When Billings or Dexter go out, oftentimes we'll see the opposition get a big run through the middle, and they're definitely going to be vulnerable to that facing Washington because the right side of that offensive line is elite, and Brian Robinson Jr. has been doing very, very well. Austin Eckler looks rejuvenated. They could get popped at any time, so you got to get those big guys a rest, but when you do, you need somebody else to be able to come in, and we can see if they can pick somebody up off the waiver wire. I doubt we'll see a trade. If we do, it's kind of a low compensation thing. It's not usually a priority for general managers, the third defensive tackle, but the Bears could use one. So that brings us to our audience question of the week, or fan question of the week, and this one comes from Jacob Kraft. He says, how can we tell if Caleb is becoming that dude, or if he is just feasting on bad defenses? I want to get excited. I believe Caleb is different, but I've never seen a real QB on the Bears in my lifetime, which is a shared opinion of a lot of Bears fans at this point, because QB success and the Bears have certainly not been synonymous. So, Ciaran, how do you think we can tell Caleb is becoming that dude?
I'm going to say this very, very slowly and very, very quietly. Get excited. It's fun. It's fun. But yeah, look, there's a couple of games that obviously it's going to be the real test for Caleb Williams. Those games are within our division. The Lions, the Vikings, the Packers on defense have all looked very, very good. The rest of the games that the Bears play, the defense they're going to come up against are nothing to write home about. I mentioned obviously the Washington Commanders. You have other teams like the Patriots, right? You have the Arizona Cardinals. Again, we'll be talking about this over the next 2 weeks, and we'll be saying similar things, that they don't rank very well in terms of the defensive metrics. So there's more defenses coming up. Even you can talk about Seattle and the 49ers, that they're kind of middle of the road right now in many of the defensive metrics. And that's kind of just what it's like in the league. There's not that many teams playing really, really good defense. And if you're able to feast on the teams that don't play well defensively, it doesn't really matter, because that's what some of the best quarterbacks in the league do. That when you come up against a team that you should beat, that you're kicking their ass. And that's what Caleb has been able to do the last couple of weeks. And the real test is going to come, yes, against Green Bay, but I think the best defense he's going to see is the Minnesota Vikings defense, because that is a ferocious defense. They give quarterbacks so many fit. Like Jared Goff has been playing really well this year. He didn't look like he wanted to be out there especially early in that game, because some of the things that Brian Flores was scheming up and some of those pressures, it's almost like you know what's coming, but you can't stop it. And those are the defenses where, yeah, really we don't get to see some of these young guys go up against those type of defenses until they kind of make the playoffs, because you might have one or two of those teams on your schedule on a yearly basis. So I think it's good that we probably won't know if Caleb Williams is that dude until he brings the Bears to the playoffs, and then you're playing against the best teams in the league. So all I will say is believe it, enjoy it, and stay along for the ride, because I think everybody, without kind of going through all the numbers, this feels different. This feels different than Justin Fields. This feels different than Mitch Trubisky. This feels different than every Bears quarterback the majority of us have lived through. So I would just say enjoy it, have some faith, and just know what you're going to see from Caleb Williams this year will be ups and downs, but some of the signs point to this is a guy that's going to be in the ascendancy, and over the next couple of years it's going to be a lot of fun to be a Chicago Bears fan.
I think you're right, and I think there's evidence on sort of both sides, or things yet to be determined. But as of right now, all the NFC North teams are in the playoffs.
Madness.
I realize we're not yet to the halfway point of the season, but we are going to see multiple games within the division. It's not just that one division-topping foe that has ruled the division for years that some divisions have. This year, the NFC North is a bunch of killers. And although the Green Bay defense has been up and down, there's a lot of talent on that defense as well. Certainly, I think in order of rank, it would be Green Bay, then Detroit, and then, like you said, Minnesota. If we're going in ascending rank for defenses, that Minnesota defense is a huge test. The Lions are a huge test because they're a very balanced team, but obviously the questions about Caleb, that means the defenses he's going to face. He's going to be forced to put some points up, but Jacob, if you're really looking for some of those signs about whether or not this guy is the dude, I would point to some of the stuff we talked about last week with Robert Mays and some of the things that Caleb is already doing 6 weeks into his NFL career, now 7, that a lot of quarterbacks don't do until year 2 or year 3. Robert cited, sort of age 27 or age 28 is where the physical catches up with the mental, or the mental catches up with the physical, in terms of making a whole quarterback in the NFL who can play at speed and use all their gifts. We're seeing that not in 3 or 4 years, but in 6 or 7 games. Those are some of the signs. Now, if you want to, keep yourself from being hurt and shield your heart, you can wait a couple more weeks, but I'm with Ciaran. Don't wait too long. It's a lot of fun to look at a Bears quarterback playing very, very well, regardless of the defense across from him, because bottom line is Caleb didn't schedule those defenses. He just plays the games on his schedule. They've been ramping up. They're going to continue to ramp up, especially when we get into those division games. We'll know more about it then, but I think you're going to have enough signs by then to say, if not right now, very, very soon, Caleb is indeed going to be that guy. So thank you for the question, Jacob. I'll reach out to you on Twitter. We'll get you a Bear Era sticker for having your question used on the show. That brings us to got to be one of my favorite segments ever so far in our young podcast life. We get to talk to JT O'Sullivan, and you're going to see that interview right here. Today on Bear Era, we are lucky enough to have a creator who I think is one of the best communicators and educators in all of football YouTube, and that, of course, is JT O'Sullivan, founder and host of the QB School on YouTube. JT, thanks so much for spending time with us today. How are you, man?
What's up? Good to see you, EJ, Ciaran. Get this thing rolling, bro. Talk some Bears. Fired up about the matchup this week. Let's go.
It is fantastic. We've got number 1 versus number 2 overall, and you have seen a ton of both of them. As you know, the way we run this is Ciaran and I will both ask you a question about the Commanders, and then you get to fire one right back at us about the Bears. So you ready to do that?
I mean, I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I'm not a great question asker. And we could go a bunch of different directions about this, but yeah, I got an idea about which way we're going to go.
All right, well, we're going to expand your skill set today if that's possible. All right, Ciaran, as usual, you get to lead it off and ask JT your question about the Commanders.
Well, I have a real question and a fake question. So I'm going to go with the fake question first. Is it okay to like Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels at the same time?
For most days, yeah. I don't know if you're going to be able to get away with that this Sunday, but yeah. But yeah, no, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. In fact, I think people who are fans of football, and especially for me, because I'm so quarterback centric, I don't know how you don't like both of them. I mean, you got to be impressed with how they've been able to come into the league and come in with the expectations that they've had, the college careers, the resume, and come in and play well and seemingly continue to get better every single week. You know, you hope that Jaden's all right and where he's at health-wise, but they've just been a blast to watch these first few weeks. And I think if you don't like both, you got to probably ask yourself why, because they've just both been playing at a high level, continue to get better. It's just refreshing to see these guys come into the league and play so well so quickly.
Yeah, and to my real question, kind of piggybacks off that we're seeing these two guys come into the league, have success, have some hiccups here or there for at the start of the season for Caleb, but really come on over the last couple of weeks. So when you watch these guys, where have you seen kind of the growth in both Caleb Williams early on, Jaden Daniels, and then is there anything where you think they can still need some time to improve on certain elements of their game?
Sure. So, I mean, that's a lot. Well, let's start with Caleb and go, I think the easy analysis is probably didn't get off to the greatest start in the world for a number of different reasons. And, you see the steady improvement, I think, is the thing to be most excited about when you look at Caleb's kind of performances. And it's not just the stat sheet. You turn on the film, you see a guy who looks polished, who looks like he's being decisive, who looks like he knows where he's going with the ball, super quick, lightning fast release, extending plays with his legs. We haven't maybe seen, those big splash plays that we got used to seeing in college football. I really do think they'll probably come into his game here as we keep moving forward. But it's one of those things where I don't know how you can't be excited about it. I would say the one thing with me, and when I watch Caleb and really the Chicago Bears offense, there are a number of things about the offense, but just about Caleb, I just feel like he's playing with guardrails on. And that might be because he's being coached to be super protective of the ball. He's being coached to understand that they've got a great defense. And all of those things I think are fine to have conversations about, and nothing about that is wrong. I just don't think he'll ever be his best version of himself until we see those extended plays, those magical plays, that arm talent on the run consistently where you're throwing the ball, pushing the ball down the field. That to me is what I think they drafted him for. Right now, it feels like they're kind of trying to cookie cutter, put him in something that, looks like a professional quarterback. And he can be that. I think he's proven he can be that. But now instead of, maybe being a statue back there in the pocket, sometimes, hey, we can get out and go and we can look downfield and we saw a little bit of it in the preseason, but I want to see, that's where I think that's why he's taken number one, if we're being honest, and so that's one of those things you just have to see kind of come into the film at some point as he gets more comfortable and they maybe take the training wheels off and allow him to just be the best version of him. For Jaden, that was a mouthful, sorry. For Jaden, I think it's been really impressive. I think Cliff has done a great job of creating a system that plays to Jaden's strengths. So his ability to push the ball down the field, be accurate. I think when you look at the system and how Jaden's played up until this point, so many of his first reads are there, and he's being accurate with those throws. So the ball comes out quickly. I really like what they have up front in that unit, especially the right side of the offensive line. I think is borderline elite. And so they lean into the run game, and you couple Jaden's passing skills and how the ball comes out quickly and the first read is there with his ability to run it and kind of the quarterback run game and kind of the mix and cocktail that Cliff has created that is the blend of kind of new age college ball with kind of Cliff version 2.0 in the league, where you see a little bit bigger personnel, you see wider flanks to protect the quarterback, you see that run game get out on the edge, and the quarterback run game get out on the edge, and it's just a beautiful combination of things. And my thing with Jaden is always going to be, your best ability is your availability. It makes me nervous when I see him run, just because he takes some hard shots in college. Hopefully he's available this weekend, all those things. He's feeling good just because he inevitably has that roadrunner vibe where things could, you could run into the side of a mountain here really quickly.
There's always that element with his game, and we did hear that his ribs are not broken, i.e. fractured. However, that probably means torn rib cartilage, and as a guy that's had both of those injuries on both sides, I'm telling you folks, it's not a whole lot better. Separated rib cartilage hurts like a bugger. That being said, you talked about some of the really cool elements that Cliff has created in that offense to give Jaden success. Where do you think Jaden, the player, has, I would say, improved or increased his aptitude the most from his time at LSU to his time with the Commanders? What's something you saw on his college eval that you said, man, he's got to do that better, and you've already seen it with his time in Washington?
Well, I think very similar to what I thought a little bit about Burrow coming out. You when you're surrounded by talent like they had on that LSU team, and I mean, it's reaffirmed for both those guys the talent that they played with. They've come into the league, and all that talent has just continued to kind of flourish. So you always want to say, like, how much of this is the quarterback and how much of this is these guys on the perimeter just gapping people, just making it look so easy. And I think that Jaden has proven that his ability, it was kind of a joke almost in the film world, like, we're just throwing fades, that type of thing, inside fades at LSU. Well, he's proven he's already thrown some ridiculous fades in the league, taking shots in the ribs, being hot, just beautiful, deep rainbow shots, Russell Wilson-esque. And so that part of it has just been outstanding to see it translate. Because for some guys, let's be honest, it doesn't translate. You'll see some college film, you don't have to go any further than like a Johnny Manziel is like the extreme. But like that playmaker vibe that just doesn't translate to the league. Well, Jaden looks like he's the same guy. And I think that's the most critical thing when you think about what is translated. He's that elite guy that went in there and won the Heisman at LSU and looked like a general on the field, knew exactly where to go with the ball. I thought he was very polished going into his final year. He just continues to look like that. I think for me, I was just a little, I really like Cliff as a dude and as like an aggressive offensive mind, but you never know. The NFL is just a different animal than so many of these other things. And when it looks like he's taken the best of college football, the best of Lincoln Riley-esque, counter perimeter screens, having the quarterback be successful with that number one read open. And he's overlaid it into this new version of Cliff, the play caller in the league. And it's just been awesome to see this quick start. Now, can we continue to do it over the course of a season? We're all going to find out. The schedule in the league is a beast, and it never slows down. You don't get no shots. I always take shots at Vandy, but you never get Vandy. It's always every single week you're playing this behemoth. And so it's just one of those things where, you hope that the level of play continues for both these guys.
It's absolutely one of the things that I think what you talked about is him continuing to play at a high level. People say, well, what's that? He was already that. But there's such a huge jump in talent between college and the pros, between speed in college and the pros. And to be able to see somebody basically not skip a beat while stepping over that very large step is really, really impressive. And my preemptive apologies to Brad Spielberger, friend of the pod, who is a Commodores alum. So we'll take that one in stride. But what do you have for us about the Bears?
All right, so this could go a bunch of different directions. All right, but this is a sweet spot for me.
I like these questions.
So I'm going to generalize it. Okay. But part of me, some of this stuff, and you can hedge it with context if you like, about like situational parts of the game. But offensively for the Bears, what is your favorite offensive personnel? Okay, people included at the skill perimeter, at the skill positions, and why?
Okay, I'm gonna go personnel first in terms of individuals, because EJ, we've spoken about this the last couple of weeks.
Yep.
This is very simple. I like when Roschon Johnson is in the game because it gives the Bears that different element, and it seems like when he's there, Caleb is able to get some of those kind of bootleg actions that we don't really see that often. When you see it sometimes with Swift, but it's because the defense is kind of, when they see Roschon going in, they're like, oh, they're definitely running the football here, because he's being that kind of third down back. But a couple of times against Jacksonville, you saw Roschon come in and it completely fooled the Jacksonville defense. So what I would like to see from, whether it be coaching, whether it be the kind of the feel of the game plan, is that they mix it up a little bit more than what we're seeing. Like, we've seen Roschon in for maybe like, I think it's 8, 9, 10 snaps. Maybe if they can increase that a little bit, you might be able to see Caleb take some of those deeper shots, because he has that bit of, let's say, space when he does roll out, which is some of the things that I think he did quite well against Jacksonville and the limited snaps that he was able to do that. And some of that misdirection, I think, could really benefit this football team kind of moving forward. So at a very kind of minute level, having that kind of, where it's not solely DeAndre Swift for the majority of the football game, I do think that could really help this Bears offense kind of give a defense different looks and more often, rather than just a couple plays a game.
Yeah, for me, I would say I want to see Cole Kmet out there. I like Roschon Johnson because I think in tandem with 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, Roschon gives you the ability to punish the defense with a quick kill. If they line up and they look like they're going to be dropping into 2 high, 4 deep, you can change to a quick run, and you've got to stop Roschon on that offensive line. So, but in terms of the receiver set, I want to see DJ and Keenan on one side. I want to see DJ running the middle route or the more athletic sort of yak in space route. Keenan's fine for inbreaker or outbreaker if they're happy with choice routes. That's cool. I want to see Rome isolated on the other side, and that's where we're going to get some of those big plays, because if you can occupy the defense and they're going to roll to DJ and Keenan's side, you can even put Kmet over there if you want to, you're going to see some of those deeper shots. And it just hasn't seemed like, if there's one thing the Bears haven't done pretty well, even in this good stretch of the last 2 to 3 weeks of offense, it's lining up their guys' skills with the routes in the offense.
All right. I didn't hear I didn't hear what I would have said.
All right. Well, you tell us what you would have said. That's why you're here, man.
No, I mean, I agree. I guess I don't really care about the back. Like, no offense.
Sure.
Like, I get it. Like, yeah, Pound, Swift. I think Swift struggled early, really struggled, and missed a number of kind of pretty simple, not simple, but what reads that I would expect him to make. So that part of it, okay. My thing about it is, I personally really, really want to see Rome in 12 personnel with the Bears moving forward. Up until this point, I feel like it's been okay. You could have gotten me by saying, hey, he's a rookie. We're going to slow his roll into his role, literally roll his role into the offense. That's fine. But you look across the landscape of the league, and there are all these rookies out there making ridiculous plays on the perimeter, and they're dynamic athletes. And to be picked where he was, and to not get the opportunity in that, to me, because I think to your point about getting these big shots down the field, 12 personnel with Lewis out there, maybe even like a unique 13 personnel with Rome out there, just to be able to stretch the field and do that kind of over the top thing that I think he can bring to this offense, and his growth in what that role looks like, to me is going to be a differentiator from where they are right now. Like if we were in their staff room going into the bye, that's a huge gap, I think, where they could fill it by increasing that role and being really intentional with getting him opportunities down the field. It doesn't always have to be over the top goes. It can be as simple as a crosser, a deep sail. There are so many different ways to manipulate that matchup, but having him on the sideline and having the other 12 personnels out there, it really, really, it hurts my soul a little bit. So I'm looking for that to be part of whatever they are in this kind of next stretch of the season.
So my question on that is, why do you think they haven't done that more often early on?
I mean, I could see if he was struggling to pick up the volume, like if he was struggling to pick up just 11 personnel wherever they have him playing, and it felt like everything was a lot. Being a rookie, I've been around guys that struggle with the volume. I don't think that would be the case coming from Washington, hearing what they were doing and the volume that it looked like they carried at the collegiate level. So, it's one of those things where, there's only one ball. And if you've got two veteran wide receivers, sometimes they can be big personalities. And you can be really, it felt like the last couple games, they were intentional with trying to feed Keenan, which is a choice. All right. They brought him in. I think it's hard when you look at the film and see the separation that he has. You can be very, happy with the output, but it's going to be hard to get those tight contested catches consistently, where if you want to create space, you got to use this dude that you used a massive pick on at his maximum capacity and start giving him more and more opportunities. And so going into the bye is just a perfect opportunity to come out of this bye in like some sort of 12 personnel, no huddle, just, all these cool things that we've been, in the lab cooking up the last few days. And so it's one of those things where a great opportunity, and I'd really be shocked if they didn't. Like, this is not like cutting edge stuff. Like, got really talented guy, go into bye, increase role moving forward is pretty simple math for me.
I like the simple math. I like your simple math. I also like the math for Caleb because, as you said, they threw a lot of balls to Keenan. Those are really tight balls. Credit to him for catching them, but also credit for Caleb for throwing them accurately, because he had to. If he didn't, those are not completions, because he had to put it on the correct shoulder on time or else. And I think both with DJ and certainly with Rome, that window gets bigger. And again, not hard math. Make window bigger for a very talented rookie quarterback. Okay, sounds great. Let's do it. So I too want to see more of that coming out of the break. JT, thanks so much for spending time with us today. Always love your insight. Certainly want to have you back in draft season, but really appreciate you taking time out of your day to come by and drop knowledge on us and all of our listeners as well.
My pleasure, guys. Congrats on the new pod. Excited to hear it out there, see where this thing goes.
Awesome to have JT on the program. Love hanging out with that guy. My favorite thing about JT O'Sullivan is he is exactly the same guy off the camera as he is on. He is just a dude talking ball. He just wants to understand the game, help other people understand the game, and really break it down. Love chopping it up with him. Very glad he came on the show. Your first exposure to dealing with JT. What was your impression, Ciaran?
As you said, he is the dude. When anybody wants to go onto YouTube, go onto any of these podcasts and kind of learn more about the quarterback position and what guys are doing well, what guys are not doing well, what offenses can kind of add in to have that bit of extra success, he's the first guy to go to. And he's a lot of fun. He's entertaining. He's very engaging. And it's great to have him on the show. Great to have him be a part of this early journey with us here on Bear Era. So yeah, absolutely delighted that he was able to come on. Delighted that our listeners get to kind of enjoy that on this week's podcast.
Somebody else who's engaging and entertaining, our very own producer, Mike Mercado. He gets a minute every week to tell you what he's thinking about in terms of the Bears. So we give you Mike on the mic.
Thank you, EJ and Ciaran, and happy Week 8 Bears fans. Welcome to Mike on the Mic. I'm producer Mike Mercado. Here we like to highlight a player, a matchup, or a storyline going into each Bears game. And this marquee NFC showdown promised to deliver plenty of fireworks. And everybody is highlighting and looking forward to the matchup between the number 1 overall pick, Caleb Williams, and the number 2 overall pick, Jaden Daniels. And while there's a lot of pressure and a lot of hype behind these 2 young rookie QBs, I believe the game comes down to 2 veteran wide receivers against a banged up and a middle of the road secondary. Terry McLaurin has 35 receptions for 454 yards and 4 touchdowns on the seasons. And his QBs, when throwing to him this season, have a passer rating of 118.9 and 1 interception. Now, DJ Moore has 31 receptions, 314 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And when his quarterbacks are throwing to him this season, they have a passer rating of 88.4 and 2 interceptions. The Commanders, against wide receivers, have given up 82 catches for 1,049 yards and 10 touchdowns. The Chicago Bears, against wide receivers, have given up 790 yards on 64 catches for 3 touchdowns. The Commanders have given up 12 passing touchdowns in 7 games to the Bears 4. And the Commanders have given up 738 yards after the catch. The Bears, 562. Well, all eyes will be on Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams. Well, all the pressure will be on Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels. I believe that if the Bears walk away from Washington against a tough NFC opponent with a victory, it's off the back of their superstar wide receiver. We've seen DJ Moore have multiple touchdown games. We've seen DJ Moore torch secondaries that he is better than in matchup. I believe that if the Bears win this big matchup, put themselves in a playoff position, put themselves atop the NFC, will be on the back of a DJ Moore superstar performance. That is what we're highlighting here on Mike and the Mic. Back to EJ and Ciaran.
Always great to hear from Mike each and every week. That brings us to our closing credits. Cheers and thanks to Homage Clothing, who's keeping the entire crew looking good for the entire season. Of course, Blue Wire Podcast, where you can find our audio podcasts. And all of you, we couldn't do this without you. We're really excited about how well the first month of this has gone, and we're looking to go to even greater heights and take you along with us for the ride. So thank you very much. If you haven't subscribed, make sure to. Tell all your friends who are Bears fans to check it out. And with that, Ciaran, you got any closing thoughts?
I think my closing thought kind of goes back to the start of the show where I said it was great to hate watch, but this division is too damn good right now. And you mentioned it on the show. It's a bit of a gauntlet that right now, if the playoffs were going on, all 4 teams were in it. And I just remember kind of looking through the schedule and the Vikings and the Lions are playing. And I was like, even if the Bears beat the Vikings twice, the Vikings are still on for like 11, 12 wins this season, which just shows how crazy this division is, that if the Bears won their next 3 games against teams that there's a viable chance that they can beat, they could not have played a division game and have 7 wins already, which again, it just shows you could split the division and win 10 games. Like, that's how bonkers this division has been and how bonkers the schedule is. So yeah, it's going to be it's a lot of fun this year, and it's about to get very, very interesting in a month's time.
Yeah, and even sooner than that with this weekend's game against Washington. We hope you enjoyed the tilt against the Commanders, and we will see you next week here on Bear Era.